rural area, um, we are hoping that it will attract people from the rural areas, or it will discourage people from the rural areas to transfer to urban areas. So ano yung mga pwedeng maka-attract sa mga residents ng rural? So first is vigorous agrarian reform. Okay, pwedeng ma-attract to na mag-stay sila dun sa rural areas. Rural settlement, rural electrification, efficient telecommunications. These are some examples of the rural development interventions that could effectively reduce rural to urban migration. So instead of, say, for example, transferring to an urban area where they have to pay yung mga rent sa households, if merong rural settlement area, then they would rather prefer to have a or take that opportunity to have to own yung mga houses doon sa rural settlement. Another is opening alternative growth centers. Ang ginagawa dito is nag-create ng service centers for other barangays within the areas of influence para ma-reduce yung pressure doon sa traditional urban centers. Nire-relocate yung ibang or ini-expand yung other services dun sa other areas of influence. Say for example, ano yung mga alternative growth centers, say for example, yung mga livelihood centers, or pwedeng yung mga transport, yung areas where the vehicles will pick up yung mga commuting public. So that creates an alternative growth center. So apart from yung sa transport network, may nade-develop na growth center within the area. So that's one way of opening alternative growth center. Next is relocation or resettlement. This is actually one effective measure in terms of decentralizing the urban population, because what you do is basically transfer, specifically if it's an out of the city resettlement. Pero marami sa cities, specifically in Metro Manila, nagkakaroon ng sila ng mga in-city resettlement. However, based sa experience ng maraming cities in Metro Manila specifically, kapag niresettle, bumabalik sila pa rin sa urban centers. Primarily because yung areas na inalipatan sa kanila hindi na prepare. It's not just enough na merong bahay. Kailangan merong ding hanap buhay. And cities basically are the centers of commerce. Nandun yung opportunities. Kaya marami pa rin ang bumabalik doon sa areas na pinagkuhan sana. If they cannot go back to the areas, then they find other areas within the urban areas, because life is there. Nandun yung pagkukuhanan nila ng mga. So these are demand management strategies. So we have improved rural services, opening alternative growth centers, and relocation or resettlement. Okay, let's proceed to designing alternative urban forms. So when you design alternative urban forms, basically dalawang scenario yung pwede. You have the base plan or you do nothing scenario, and then alternatives to the base plan. But etong two scenarios na to can create various forms. Pwedeng maraming design na nagfo-fall under A and then nagfo-fall sa B. So the base plan or do nothing scenario basically answers the question: what is the likely shape of the town or city in the future given the present and trends of growth? Is this growth at or generally constraint free, at least in physical environmental terms? So ito yung question na sinasagot kapag gumagawa ng base plan or the do nothing scenario. For alternatives to the base plan, ang main question na sinasagot is, will there be enough land to accommodate the projected population? If the answer is no, make various assumptions of person-land ratio until an acceptable balance of demand and supply is reached. Okay? So maraming ginagawa during the exercise, no, yung preparation of the base plan and the alternative to the base plan. All right, let's take a look at the urban form stereotypes. No? Ito yung mga urban form stereotypes. First is the dispersed sheep. No? This pattern is similar to the native settlements prior to the coming of the Spanish colonizers. Very small clusters of huts in widely scattered barangays. Okay, so makikita nyo yung mga dots. No? These are ito yung mga huts. No? Adding characteristics, new growth allowed to occur at the periphery at very low densities with substantial inter, inter, interstices of open lands kept in reserve. Development spread evenly over wide continuous tract, circulation carried out by individual vehicles. Very high accessibility to open land, outdoor recreational possibilities, 94. Transport network, a continuous grid designed for even movement in all directions. No road hierarchy, no major nodal points, no major terminals. No, makikita nyo yung nag-criss-cross, similar yung width. No? Activity areas evenly distributed, maximum flexibility, personal comfort, independence, local participation, highly possible. There is no traffic congestions, no multiple purpose trips, only single purpose trips, and no vivid or memorable image of the city, and public service provision is expensive. For the second urban form stereotype, we have the galaxy settlements. Okay? The Spaniards reduced the number of small scattered settlements into fewer but larger pueblos or towns. Later, some barrio grew into large settlements that rivaled the old Luzon in population size and complexity of services. So, characteristics ng galaxy settlements. Development is clustered into relatively small units and each with an internal peak of density and separated from the next by a zone of low or zero density. Each cluster is equal to the next in importance of the specialization. Say, for example, financial center, cultural center is possible. Circulation, mainly by private vehicle, but supplementary public transport is possible. All advantages of the dispersed sheep except flexibility are present. And if clusters are not too specialized, there's a need for the need for commuting is reduced. Access to open country is assured if interstitial open spaces are maintained. And then the visual image of local communities improved, but not of the whole town. And then local centers may develop monotonous similarity unless deliberately made unique and different. And then we have the core city. This is another urban form stereotype. Some towns accommodate their urban growth in the poblacion because of physical and policy constraints to expanding sidewise horizontally. Okay, so one example cited in the source book is Sampaloc and Lukban in Quezon Province. No? Development packed into one continuous body. There is no single detached, single family housing, only high-rise apartments available. No private vehicles. Movement is by pedestrian on foot or mechanical devices like elevators, escalators, or conveyor belts. Accessibility is high, both to activity centers and to open country at the edge of the city. There is high density increases discomfort due to noise, pollution, and poor climate. Narrow range of housing choice available. Produces strong visual image for the whole town. Initial investments are high, but running costs may be low. Highly rigid and inflexible, any change or rearrangement is very expensive in the core city urban form. Next, we have the urban star. Okay? When more regional roads were built traversing the town center, urban growth tended to follow along the roads, thus preventing the town center from becoming very large. Thus, the urban form resembles a star. Okay? An example sa Philippines, according to Professor Surote, is the Coronadal City or Apurong City. Okay? Characteristic, a dominant core surrounded by secondary centers distributed along main radials. Towns of open land incorporated in the design, resulting in a pattern with a star-shaped, high-density core with fingers of moderate densities along lines of radial routes. System of low radial patterns, efficient public transport along radials and inside the core, supplementary concentric rings to connect secondary centers, improve circulation in general. Ito yung mga circles na nagpo-connect ng mga secondary centers. Private vehicles allowed in the fringes, but may have to be curtailed in the center. Central core accommodates rapid communications, and specialized services, offers wide variety of choice of habitat and activities. Very strong yung visual image, as you can see. It's flexible, can easily accommodate future growth. It's costly circumferential road network. Okay, and then congestion occurs at the central core and main radials. The next urban form stereotype is the ring. Okay, when there are constraints to urban expansion at the center settlement, at the center, settlements tend to go around like a ring. And the good example is Trinidad Benguet. Okay, so donut-like form, center kept open or at very low density, surrounded by high density development and special activities. Circulation is through a series of rings serving the ring, supplemented by feeder radials converging at empty center. No single dominant center, but several centers which might be specialized. So nakikita nyo yung mga black dots. These are the several centers, no? And they can actually specialize. Other activities are distributed along ring roads or nagko-connect ng mga lines. High accessibility to services and open land, wide range of choice of housing and services. Congestion is avoided, circulation very efficient. Strong visual image due to contrast provided by the empty core. Ito nasa gitna. Rigid and inflexible as a form, preserving the open character of the core and the fringes of the built-up ring entails very strong political will and very high civic consciousness. Okay ba? So, now that you're able to identify kung ano yung urban form, design mo na yung mga alternative urban forms, na-review mo na yung mga urban form stereotype, then what to do next is to evaluate and select the alternative. Okay? And these are the tools, no, in evaluating and selecting alternatives. And first is the cost-benefit analysis adapted from Nathaniel Litchfield. So, ano yung mga tasks, no, na involved kapag gagamitin mo yung cost-benefit analysis? Okay? So what you do first is to define the alternative spatial strategies which are under consideration. That's the first thing to do. So, inupuno mo yung dito sa alternative strategy. Okay? And then you estimate the cost of the program and projects, that is the value of the capital investment and operating resources required to realize each alternative strategy. And then you define the benefits from the investment and put a value to these benefits by methods appropriate to their nature. And then distinguish between real benefits and costs from those that are transfers. Okay? Real benefits and costs are those resulting in gain or loss to the community as a whole. Transfers are those gains or losses to some sections of the community, but which will be cancelled out by corresponding gains and losses to other sections. So there's a distinction between real benefits and costs as opposed to transfer. So again, yung transfer can be cancelled out by corresponding gains and losses to other sections. And then you relate real benefits to cost by appropriate criteria. Okay, say for example, the rate of return, which needs to be carefully selected according to the circumstances to indicate the course which shows the best value for money. So on the slide, dito yung 5 criticisms dito sa cost-benefit analysis. Now, first is the circulation of costs and benefits in monetary terms may be too long, complicated, and expensive. It does not accommodate intangible benefits nor indirect costs of related projects. It does not give room for uncertainties in implementation. It is suitable for the evaluation of single projects with simple objectives. And it does not lend itself to participatory processes and is confined to technical evaluations only. Okay. The next tool is the planning balance sheet or the PBS. Okay? So, ang ginagawa dito is you write the objective and then you assign a weight for the sector. You know? And then ina-identify yung score per alternative strategy. And so the planning balance sheet divides the affected groups into producers, operators, and consumer users. It is not necessary to express all costs and benefits in money terms. However, it is necessary to reduce benefits and costs into some common units to permit aggregation for producers and consumers separately and comparison of alternatives. Next tool is the goal achievement matrix. No? Um, hinihiwalay yung kay consumers in terms of benefit, cost, and balance, and then for the consumers, benefit, cost, and balance. So it is designed to avoid the disadvantages of either two methods. The GAM involves the following activities. First is the explicit formulation of a set of objectives. If objectives are already given, say a vision statement, these should be broken down into measurable indicators, which will serve as evaluation criteria. The ranking or rating of alternative strategies against each individual objective, the weighting of objectives for the relative importance to particular sections of the community, and the combining of scores to obtain relative measure of goals achievement for each alternative. Okay, now we're now in the detailing of selected alternative. So when meron ka ng alternative na napili, now you need to detail na yung alternative na yun. Okay? So the main question dito is, where should the town center be located consistent with the preferred spatial strategy? And doon sa, when you detail the town center, meron siyang dapat na 4 focal points. Okay? Ano yung 4 focal points? We have the city or municipal hall, the parish church or churches or mosque, the central business district, and then the central park or the town plaza. And then from the town center, you move to the residential pattern. Okay? So yung primary concern sa residential pattern is the promotion of health and safety of the residents. Okay? And it suggests that location of residential areas must be free from natural and man-made hazards to life and limb and must have a pleasant and healthful environment. The other concern relates to access by local residents to places of employment. No? You need to consider yung travel time and distance, no, nung residentials, say, to a road network or main places where they need to transfer from that place to their place of work. Shopping and community level services, as well as the city or municipal level services. One simple way to ensure access by ordinary residents is to declare by ordinance that all customary footpaths be recognized as public easements, which must be kept open at all times. No? I think sa context ng ibang places in Metro Manila, no, nawawala yung footpaths. Meron lang road, pero yung ideally dapat merong easement, no, na magsiserve as footpaths na nawala sa ibang areas in Metro Manila. So kaya sabi dito, to ensure access to ordinary citizens, dapat merong ordinance. No? Pero dapat nandun din siya sa design, no, yung residential pattern. Ano yung ina-allot for the footpaths. And doon sa easement, meron tayong I believe it's a national law, no, yung easements na, if I'm not mistaken, it's 5 meters, no, 5-meter easement from the road. And then for the production areas, or spaces for making a living are those taken up by commercial, office, industrial, agricultural, tourism, and similar activities. And then commercial areas, no, ito yung nandito yung public market, no. And commercial area serves principally the local residents and to a lesser extent the non-residents. Therefore, decision was made whether there should be only one public market or several, which are located in various spaces close to the concentration of population, also consistent with the chosen spatial strategy. As an alternative, no, in many areas in the Philippines, kapag walang public market, ang nailalagay is talipapa. But the talipapa, hindi siya parang official na public market, no? Yung iba nasa road, yung iba nasa gilid lang. So dapat kasama sa commercial area yung public market. Kaya may decision point doon. Isa lang bang public market or several public markets? So you also look at the capacity of the public market, and then you look at the population growth, no? Kung dumadami, especially kapag naging dense na yung area, say, marami ng condominiums. No? So, fill in na rin yung mga units sa condominium na yun, that would imply, that would tell you rather kung ano yung capacity na nakaya ng public then you have to make a decision. Okay? Isa lang na occupier. And then industrial areas. Sa industrial area, the main decision is whether to have a separate industrial zone or allow industries to intersperse with other activities. Now, if the choice is the latter, that is to allow the intersperse with other activities, individual firms certainly have their own perception of what makes for profitable locations. The local government must evaluate location of industries on the basis of their impact to the environment, impact to traffic, and to public provision of services and utilities like water and sewerage system, telecommunications, facilities, electric power, and service roads. Okay. Another area under production area is the agriculture and other resources extraction area. Okay. Sabi dito, for proper guidance of local government units, the maps of protected agricultural areas prepared by DSWM of the DNR for Sustainable Agriculture and Fisheries Development Zones, or the SAFDC, pursuant to the provisions of RA 8435, should be incorporated in their comprehensive land use plan and zoning ordinance. And then tourism areas. Okay. Sabi dito, care should be taken, however, that the development of tourist resources does not result in their environmental degradation, as well as in moral corruption of the local population. Tourism development should not deprive the local residents of access to common resources such as beaches, lakes, rivers, natural forests, caves, mountains, and the like. Okay, so because beaches are ano siya, public property, merong measure, may mga standards na siniset, no? Kapag yung mga properties are beachfront. So next is infrastructure areas. So infrastructure is not limited to buildings, but it also includes telecommunications, transport, no? So it provides a vital link between and among the different land use areas, as well as support the activities for living and those for making a living. Okay. So circulation system. So circulation system is a major factor contributing to the formation of the physical structure through traffic, that is use of existing municipal streets to handle diverted traffic, or poblacion barrier traffic. These are alternate routes. Customary footpaths should also be identified. And then internal circulation in the population. Ito yung bus terminals at the edges of the town center, recovering sidewalks, pedestrianizing certain streets, signal lights, elevated footbridges. No? Ito yung mga examples of circulation systems. And other major infrastructures and urban services, like domestic water sources, sewage disposal, garbage dump or sanitary landfill. No? In sa maraming cities in Metro Manila, yung kanilang sanitary landfill nandun sa ibang region. Or meron, I think, meron situated sa Navotas. No? And then power sources, flood control and drainage, and then social service facilities. And then, kailangan ma-detail din dun sa urban form alternative, yung open space and the preservation areas. Functional open spaces are areas that are deliberately kept in their open character for their contribution toward maintaining the amenity value of the environment. So, ano yung open spaces? Ito yung hierarchy of functions. So, first is the town plaza or square. Next is lower order parks, neighborhood and community centers, and then lower end open spaces. Barangay parks, neighborhood parks, best pocket parks, and then potlucks or children play areas. Meron mga cities in Metro Manila na nahihirapan na mag-identify ng open spaces. No? Kasi nga, halos na puno na yung naging built area na yung cities. But critical yung role, no? Yung mga open spaces. It says here that the boundaries of each land use class and subclass should be delimited as precisely as possible, because this will be directly translated into the zoning ordinance. As a general rule, all pertinent national laws should be reviewed and their local implications carefully analyzed to ensure compliance and to avoid conflicts. All right, let's move to chapter 6, the comprehensive development planning process. Okay, so again, we'd like to highlight that development is both a product and a process. No? So hindi siya, development is not just an end goal, no? But it's also a process. Okay, so ano yung development sectors and their concerns? No? So, ito yung mga concerns ng development sectors. There are six. We have social characteristics, quality of life, access to social services, social justice, general welfare goals, and then the social sector programs, projects, and activities. Okay. This is for social sector development. Ang concern naman ng economic sector, we have full employment promotion, general welfare goals, and then food self-sufficiency or security. For environmental sector, okay, ang main concern ng environmental sector is to ensure that the proper measures to safeguard and conserve land, minerals, marine forests, and other resources are enacted by the sanggunian and enforced by the local chief executive. Okay, so ang enforcement ng environmental laws, ng environmental ordinances is nakalans sa local chief executive. And then, ang concern naman ng land use or infrastructure sector, the preferred spatial strategy or urban form, the projected levels of food self-sufficiency and production targets, eliminating current backlogs in the provision of social services, upgrading the quality of services and facilities to the desired outcomes, reducing vulnerability of the local population to environmental risks and disasters, and maintaining the integrity of the environment. So ito yung concern ng infrastructure or land use sector. For the institutional sector, the principal concern is to see that the local government officialdom and bureaucracy are properly tooled up and primed up to manage local growth and change. So yung institutional sector is internal. No? So it deals with yung local government employees, yung mga elected officials, and all parties na involved sa operations ng local government. Okay, so you're looking at the comprehensive development planning process. Let's start with etong nasa left. Yung input para doon sa identifying of development issues and concerns. Okay, you can use your ecological profile, no, or the existing national government agencies programs. Or you can use yung mga sectoral studies because that can also be an input, no, doon sa identifying the sectoral development issues and concerns. No? And then, pwede mo ring gamitin yung detailed sectoral studies para i-clarify yung mga sectoral and development issues and concerns. And from there, you craft your sectoral development objectives and strategies. So ano yung input para doon sa sectoral development objectives and strategies? You can consider yung CLU, policy areas, okay, policies, and then yung local government units, mandates, and thrusts. No? And then from your objectives and strategies, you identify yung mga sectoral programs and projects. So ano yung pwedeng maging input para sa design ng sectoral programs and projects? You can still consider yung nakalatag doon sa group policies or yung mga development strategies and policies based from the LGU mandates and thrusts. And then if you have your sectoral programs and projects, you then create yung project ideas or project briefs. Yung project ideas and project briefs. But it has to be consistent with the zoning ordinance and other legislation. So kapag na-create na yung mga project ideas or project briefs, you then create your local development investment program. Okay? And then from the LDIP, again, kukunin yung AIP, you prepare yung annual budget, and then you implement the programs and projects. Okay? Dito naman sa right, ito yung simplified sectoral planning process. Okay, dito, yung figure sa left is a sectoral development planning process. So, saan nagsa-start yun? Yung the vision statement. Yung vision statement, nandun siya sa comprehensive land use plan nanggagaling. And then, from the vision statement, sa comprehensive land use plan, hiwa-hiwalay mo yung mga vision elements per sector ng comprehensive development plan. And then, pupunin mo yung mga element descriptors, or i-identify yung mga element descriptors per vision element. And then from the element descriptors, nilalatag yung mga success indicators of each descriptor. So merong vision elements, merong element descriptors. Sa bawat element descriptor, merong success indicator. And then you compare the success indicator with the current reality or the observed reality. From there, makikita nyo yung vision reality gap. So may tool dito, parang may scoring sheet na ginagamit. No? Kung ito yung success indicator, ano yung score? And then kung ito yung reality, ano yung equivalent score? And then makukuha mo yung gap between the vision and the reality. So yung output is the vision reality gap. No? Yung current reality mo, pwedeng punin sa ecological profile, it can be from a statistical compendium, pwedeng doon sa mga decision zones or doon sa problem solution matrix. No? These would, dito ma-reveal yung current reality ng local government. So if you're able to identify your vision reality gap, doon ka mag-craft ng sectoral goals. The next step is to craft yung mga sectoral goals. No? And then you have to consider yung time and resource constraints na kapag mag-craft ka na ng mga sectoral objectives and targets. Okay? Again, sinabi natin kanina dito sa left, no, yung dito sa sectoral development objectives and strategies, input dito yung group policies, bago i-design yung sectoral programs and projects. But the group policies can also be an input sa mga sectoral programs and projects. So, you prepare your sectoral programs and projects, and then you create your LDIP, and then you create yung AIP. Okay? Dito sa right, ito yung kay legislative. No? At magpropose sila ng new legislations, and then ika-craft nila yung kanilang legislative agenda. And then, magsasama yung dalawa sa executive legislative agenda formulation. From the LDIP, your AIP, prepare yung annual budget, and then magpuproceed ka ulit sa programs and projects implementation. No? So lahat nung nasa annual budget, ideally ay dapat i-implement ng local government. Okay? So this is yung simplified sectoral planning process. No? Ang critical dito is yung subvision statement na hinuhugot yung elements, the descriptors, the success indicators, and then you look at your current reality, you compare, you generate your vision reality gap. From after identifying your vision reality gap, you identify the sectoral goals, and then your sectoral objectives and targets. And then from there, you prepare or you design sectoral programs and projects, and then you formulate the LDIP, the AIP, and then gagawin na rin yung annual budget. On the legislative side, magpropose sila ng new legislations based from the sectoral objectives and targets with due consideration to group policies and then sectoral strategies and policies. And then ika-craft nila yung kanilang legislative agenda. Saka ma-prepare yung executive and legislative agenda. So this is a sample, no, dito sa element descriptor and success indicator coming from the vision element. So merong descriptor na firm, decent, and progressive. So galing ko doon kay the group and CP, no? Firm, decent, and progressive. And ito yung mga sample success indicators. Okay? So ito naman yung current reality creating scale. No? Again, ito yung current reality. So this rating is from 0 to 10. Okay, 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. So meron siyang midpoint, which is 5. And the goal is half accomplished. So if the goal is completely attained and no further effort is needed, the score of the current reality is 10. If nothing has yet been done about the goal, the score is 0. Okay? And then, ito yung mga scores between 1, ito yung interpretation kapag ang score is between 1 to 4 and 6 to 9. Okay, so dito natin to, merong identifying legislations or right dun sa proposed new legislations. No? Um, so ito yung identifying legislation. No? If you want to identify kung ano yung mga needed legislation, you first check, is it non-existent or existent? Okay, so if it's existent, you check if the legislation is still sound, if it's defective or if it's not adequate. No? If it's defective or not adequate, it's either you repeal, you amend, or you replace. If the legislation is still sound, okay, you check if it's properly implemented, if the implementation is deficient, or if it is not being implemented at all. If the legislation is still sound, if the legislation is still sound, but there is a deficient implementation of the legislation, you have two options. You strengthen the implementing agency, or to increase sanctions for violations. If the policy is still sound, but it is not being implemented at all, you can either replace it or strengthen the implementing agency. So ang implementing agency nito is the executive. So the executive knows kung ano yung mga certain offices na nag-implement nung legislation na yun or yung ordinance. So it's not enough na yung for the local government unit na may inventory ng legislation. It's also critical na if may existing legislation, merong ganitong tracking, no? Kung defective, not adequate, sound, no? Being implemented properly, no? Ilan yung revenue na nag-generate out of that legislation. Kasi makikita mo yun kung if the ordinance, no, is imposes penalties, no, nag-impose ng penalties, say for etong sanctions for violations, makikita mo that it is not being implemented at all because wala siyang revenue. It did not bring any revenue to the local government unit. Then it's either you replace it or you strengthen the implementing agency. So it's also critical na natatrack ka ng local government units. No? Not just the inventory, but how those policies or ordinances are being implemented at the local level. No? However, if the legislation is necessary and it is not existing, then there's only one track, and that is to enact the ordinance. Okay? So, I think ito yung simplified planning process, pero nilatag yung elaboration of ends, no? Distinguish yung elaboration of ends and then the specification of means. Yung nasa upper part, ito yung kay CNP, itong nasa lower part is sa CBP. Okay? So, you have the vision statement, no? May element descriptors, may success indicators, yung current reality, no? Dadalhin mo, or gagamitin mo siya when you identify yung mga success indicators. No? Pwede siyang maging basis. No? So, saan nanggagaling yung current reality? It can be from ecological profile, statistical compendium, or sa mga thematic maps, no? Na ginagamit sa CLUP. But notice na yung thematic maps can also be an input doon sa CBP, no? Kapag gumagamit ng locations na yung mga sectoral information na naka-plot sa map. Again, kapag meron ka ng vision statement, you are guided by you craft your planning guide goals, no? And then yung spatial strategies, no, is actually a specification of needs. And then yung location principles, yung alin yung protection, alin yung production, alin yung settlement, and then yung infrastructure. Now, pagdating sa CBP, you first identify your vision reality gap, no? And then you craft the sectoral goals. Note that the sectoral goals lays what it takes to close the gap. Dun mo nilalatag. I mean, what will it take to close the gap? And then the sectoral objectives and targets. Okay, what can be reasonably done in 3 years? And then yung specification of means, dito na yung nag-develop ka ng policies, na identifying strategies, you design programs, projects, no? And then legislation. So, etong mga policies na to, if it's not included dito sa legislation, these are policies within the executive. Either executive orders, office memorandum. Sa legislation, dalawa lang to, either ordinance or resolution. So, ito yung mga specification it means. Policy, strategies, programs, projects, and legislation. Sa CLUP, yung specification means is yung paglulocate doon sa protection area, production area, settlement area, and infrastructure area, or policies. Protection, policy, production, settlement, and infrastructure. Okay, let's move to the executive and legislative agenda. Okay, sabi dito, when the CDP process has reached this stage, the sectoral programs and projects and the proposed legislations are compiled, reconciled, and otherwise processed and refined to form the local government's unit's executive legislative agenda for the next 3 years. Okay, and then we'll look at the relationship between plans, programs, and projects. Okay, so a plan is composed of several programs in the hierarchy. Programs are composed of several projects. Okay? Each project is composed of several activities, and then yung mga activities na yun composed of different tasks. Okay? So say for example, etong plan, you have a plan, and then under this plan may 4 programs. Falling under program 2 may 3 projects. Sa second project, merong 4 na activities, and then sa activity 2, nakalatag yung mga tasks. So, ito yung hierarchy. You have plan, program, project, activity, and tasks. Okay? So, umbrella yung form, no? Yung covering is yung plan. Sa bawat plan, may program. Under each program, there's a project, and yung bawat project, yung detail yung mga activities. And for every activity, nakalatag yung mga tasks. Okay, so ano yung distinction between programs, projects, versus services or non-projects? Okay, so ito yung distinction. Programs, projects, may specific life cycle, okay, may definite start and completion points with calendar dates, can be abruptly terminated if goals are not met, always terminated when program or project is completed. Often unique, not done before, not repeated when completed. Total effort must be completed within fixed budget and schedule. Prediction of ultimate time and cost is difficult. Involves multidisciplinary skills from different departments or organizations, which may change from one life cycle to the next. And then the rate and type of expenditures constantly change. And basically, programs and projects are dynamic in nature. Pagdating naman dito sa services or non-projects, continuous live from year to year kasi existing service, no specific event tied to calendar dates other than fiscal year budgets. No? So, nag-end siya kapag nag-close yung fiscal year budget, pero magko-continue siya if it's a continuing service the following fiscal year kasi nandun siya ulit mag-appear sa budget. Assurance of continued function even in a major reorganization usually involves performance of well-established functions and tasks are only slightly different from past efforts. Maximum work is performed within annual budget ceiling. Prediction of annual expenditure is relatively simple. Involves one or a few closely related skills and disciplines within one well-defined and stable organization. A relatively constant rate and type of expenditure, and basically it is steady state. It has a steady state nature. Okay, so ito yung sample ng distinction between a program and projects or services. Pero magkasama yung projects and services. No? So yung strategy is on the left. So for each strategy, may mga na-identify na several programs. No? This can be part of a plan. No? So say for example, this is a plan for, say for example, agriculture. No? So for each strategy, say for example, dito sa increased farm yield, may 2 programs. Sa alternative livelihood service available, may 2 programs. And then for each program, merong several projects or services. Okay? Nakalagay sa sample na to, yung mga services or non-projects written in italics are rather yung projects, yes, yung projects and services written in italics are rather either services or non-projects or require regulatory measures. No? So, yung mga hindi italics are either are baka exclusive na project lang siya. No? Yung italics are either services or non-projects. Ano yung political implication ng zoning? No? It says that when the local assembly enacts a zoning ordinance, the legislators must understand that they are exercising their political power to withdraw from property owners' bundle of rights, one of those rights meaning the right to develop or use their property. While they continue to enjoy all the other rights to their property, property owners can no longer decide on their own what use to make of their property. The right to use has been transferred from the individual owners to society at large. Henceforth, each time an individual wants to use his land, he has to secure clearance from the local government, being the administrator of socialized rights in the use of land. So that is the political implications of zoning. No? Yung mga landowners, yung mga property owners, they can no longer decide on their own. Kaya they have to secure clearance from the local government. Because the local government now is the administrator of socialized rights in the use of lands. Okay, so this is a tool for implementing the COOP and Table 7.1 from the source book, no? Ito yung framework for new zoning. So, nilalatag yung mga land use categories or yung zoning districts, and then ina-identify dito sa out of these land use categories of zoning districts, alin yung private domain, alin yung public domain, and then alin yung ancestral. All right, so this is another tool, no, yung sa in implementing the clue, no, ang critical dito is yung code, no, and then yung I cannot remember kung tinanong yung RGB codes, no? So, for forest land, no, ang color nila is dark green for protection and production. For protection, makikita nyo merong diagonal lines, no? So, nakalagay yung code. Forest Reserve is FR, National Park is NP, Military and Naval Reservation is MR. Civil Reservation CR, Forest Buffer, FB, and NIPA Strict Protection Zone is NSP. Okay? For production, it's dark green. Ang RGB is 0100. Okay? For agriculture, divided into protection, production, no? Light green, use of protection, merong diagonal lines. So production, wala. No? So ang RGB is 0150. Again, the key is to remember na yung sa protection merong diagonal lines. No? Yung sa production walang diagonal lines. Okay, again, may diagonal lines yung sa protection, nakalagay yung mga codes, nag-change ulit yung RGB, no? Mapapansin nyo, yung RGB sa protection and production is pareho, 175, 200, 225, except for production, wala siyang diagonal lines. Okay, and then for tourism, okay, orange, tourism and ecotourism. Residential is yellow, so tatlong types. May residential, may socialized housing, may informal settlers. So residential is yellow. Okay. For commercial, it's red. Okay. And then for agri-industrial, it's purple. Okay. And then for industrial, it's violet. For institutional, it's blue. Arts and recreation, it's a different yung kanyang green, pero different yung kanyang RGB. No? And then for infrastructure, landfill, dump site, including utilities, transportation, and services, gray. No? So, wala nang distinction doon sa protection production. No? Walang diagonal lines. So, ilang colors na? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 yung colors. Okay, so makikita mo sa map, right away, if it's yellow, you know that it's residential. Kapag orange, tourism. Kapag red, it's commercial. No? Kapag gray, it is infrastructure or landfill or dump site. Okay, so ano yung mga regulatory tools na ginagamit? First is taxes on real property. Okay, so it's real property tax, special education fund, idle land tax, okay, special levy, additional 5% on urban lands not less than 1,000 square meters, the special benefit levy, lands that specially benefited by public projects, and allows local government unit to recover as much as 60% of the cost of the project from contributions by the owners of the lands. And then another regulatory tool is the eminent domain proceedings. Ito yung take back yung private property for public purposes. Like madadaanan ng national road, no? Or if you take back yung property because may project si government. So for example, settlement. So dadaan sila sa eminent domain proceedings. No? And then another is public investment programming, or guided private investments and co-management of other domains, either through memorandum of agreement with DNR, NCIP, or other national government agencies. All right. Note that the Local Development Investment Program is the principal instrument for implementing the CDP. So, napag-aralan na natin ito earlier. And to some extent, certain aspects of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. An implementing instrument ng Comprehensive Land Use Plan is the Zoning Ordinance. The local development component of the LDIP, therefore, must consist of programs and projects that are local, that is, those that are in pursuance of the local government units exercise of its powers and in the discharge of its duties and functions necessary for effective governance and essential for the promotion of the general welfare. Okay. Another concept that was introduced in local development investment programming is public investment. The concept of investment in public finance has almost the same meaning as in private or household finance, and it consists of that portion of income that is retained after satisfying all the expenses necessary for the upkeep of the household or for running the affairs of the organization. Okay, so portions of the income that is retained after satisfying all the expenses necessary for the upkeep of the household or for running the affairs of the organization. So, paano nadidistribute? Ano yung distribution ng local development fund? Divided into, yung expense type, no, sa government is divided into three. No? We have PS, capital outlay, and then MOO. So, yung capital outlay refers to office capital outlay. No? Yung development fund is divided into non-office capital outlay and the non-office MOE. And then yung MOE, it refers to the office MOE. So yung development fund, hindi pwedeng mag-charge ng PS doon sa development fund. Okay? It should be allocated to non-office capital outlay and non-office MOE. So there's this guideline kung ano yung pwedeng i-charge doon sa development fund of the local government. Okay, sabi dito, the local development fund is that portion of the local budget that is flowed back to the people in the form of programs, projects, and services. And it consists of the following. Okay, 20% of the IRA or the NTA, non-office maintenance and other operating expense, non-office capital outlay, no? Non-office capital outlay. The local development fund does not include that portion of the local budget which is consumed by the local government machineries for salaries, wages, and other personal costs, office maintenance, and other operating expenditures, and the office capital outlay. Okay, because yung office capital outlay, napupunta siya capital outlay. And then yung office MOE naka-charge doon sa MOE na local government. Okay, so sa table na to, um, nakita kung paano distinguish yung process from development planning to investment programming and doon sa budgeting implementation. No? So, na-discuss na natin kahapon yung sa investment programming, no? Yung uh, na you prepare the rank list, no? And then that's for stream 1, and then doon sa stream 2, ito yung mga gagawin. No? And then ina-match mo sa Steam fee kung match na yung rank list and then yung funding. And then if yes, then you prepare your 3-year investment program and then approve through resolution of ordinances and then it translate into the annual budget. As soon as the annual budget is approved, then i-implement na yung mga plans, programs, and projects stipulated dun sa annual budget. Take note that yung annual budget kasama sa attachment ng annual budget lahat ng thematic plans. No? So, nilalatag sa annual budget yung amount na na-allocated for specific purpose. No? Say, for example, yung 20%, or rather, at least 5% of the regular income which is allocated for LDRMF, nakalatag siya sa annual budget. No? Pero ina-attach pa rin because these plans are actually integral part of the annual budget. So ina-attach yung LDRM plan, ina-attach yung GAD plan. So the rest of the thematic plans shall form part of the annual budget. They are integral part of the annual budget. And then as soon as ma-approve siya ng local sanggunian, i-implement siya the following operate the following year. Because ang annual budget is approved towards the last quarter of the year. Pero ang period of implementation is the ensuing year. So, again, ibig sabihin, kapag may annual budget, sinusundan nyo ng local government unit. And to introduce new programs, projects, or activities, mag-aantay yung local government unit either ng supplementary budget or mag-aantay na magkaroon ng savings or i-identify nila kung alin yung aayusin doon sa annual budget para ma-accommodate yung needs. Say, merong disaster and then short yung LDRMF, well, naubos yung 70%, may nakaalat na 30%, and then short pa rin yung 30%. No? So, dadaan siya ulit sa process. No? Because may mga allocations na naka-allocate na yung funding ng local government. Now, this is another tool for prioritizing projects at the local government unit level. So you're looking at 6 categories and then nakalagay yung criteria. No? So let's start with urgent category. Kung yung program or project is urgent, yung criteria is that projects that cannot be reasonably postponed. No? So ang label natin doon is urgent. If the project would remedy conditions dangerous to public health, safety, and welfare, so urgent yan. Projects needed to maintain critically needed programs, urgent and classification. Projects needed to meet emergency situations, that's urgent. No? Whereas projects required to complete or make usable a major public improvement, it is essential. Projects required to maintain minimum standards as part of ongoing program, essential. Desirable self-liquidating projects, it is also essential. Projects for which external funding is available, essential. Okay. Projects that should be carried out to meet clearly identified and anticipated needs, necessary. Projects to replace obsolete or unsatisfactory facilities, it's necessary. Repair or maintenance projects to prolong life of existing facilities, it is necessary. Under desirable, we have projects needed for expansion of current programs, projects desired to initiate new programs considered appropriate for a progressive community. For acceptable, these are projects that can be postponed without detriment to present operations if budget cuts are necessary. So, pwedeng ma-postpone. And then for deferrable projects, these are projects recommended for postponement or elimination from immediate consideration in the current LBIP, and projects that are questionable in terms of overall needs, adequate planning, or proper timing. Okay, how do you determine investable funds? No? A local development investment program, the resulting capital budget is only as good as the financial plan for the proposed project. And the number of public projects that a local government can finance depends on five things. One, the revenue level of the local government unit. Um, Malaki ba yung revenue level? And then, and ang revenues ng local government units, it's either locally sourced, no? Ibig sabihin, galing lang doon sa locality, or galing siya sa national government agencies. Okay, so kasama doon yung ERA coming from the national government. And then the level of recurring local government operating expenditures. Level of recurring local government operating expenditures. Third is the current public debt level, yung binabayaran na loan. No? So makikita kung magkano yung natitira from the local government. The statutory debt ceiling, and then potential sources of financial revenue available for investment project financing. No? Are there additional revenue available for investment project financing? So again, yung number of public projects na pwedeng i-finance ng local government unit would depend on these five things. And then the local finance committee, composed of the local planning and development coordinator, the budget officer, and the treasurer, is charged under the local government code with the setting of the level of the annual expenditures and the ceilings of spending for economic, social, and general services based on the approved local development plans. Okay, let's move to the monitoring and evaluation towards a cyclical planning. No? The critical importance of monitoring and evaluation in linking one planning cycle to the next lies in the production of new information derived from the assessment of impacts of plans, programs, and projects as implemented, the effects of regulatory measures as enforced, as well as the outcomes of developments in the area that had not come under the control or influence of the local planning system. No? Para maging na-institutionalized yung monitoring and evaluation, dapat doon sa plan, meron ng nakasama, no? Say for example, include na yung M&E framework, include na yung mga terms of reference in terms of monitoring and evaluation. No? Otherwise, ang nangyari, na-prepare yung plan pero natago siya sa shelf for a long time. Except of course, doon sa nag-implement ng zoning ordinance, yung nag-i-issue ng clearance. So, they keep looking back doon sa they keep referring on the ordinance. No? But for the plans, programs, and projects, no, critical na nag-undergo ng regular monitoring. Kaya required ang local government unit na magkaroon ng project monitoring and evaluation team. No? Kailangan meron silang project monitoring and evaluation team sa local government unit. So sabi dito, consistent with the local planning structure and its mandated functions, M&E is built-in function of the sectoral or functional committees. So yung monitoring and evaluation is nakalodge na doon sa sectoral or functional committees. So i-report na lang nila yun sa EXICOM or to the entire membership of the Local Development Council. As per Rule 28, Article 182, Paragraph G, Item 3, Sub-Item 6 of the IRR of the Local Government Code. Okay, so how does monitoring and evaluation differ? So monitoring is a continuous process of data collection and analysis to check whether a project is running according to plan and to make adjustments if required. It is an evaluative study directed to the short term. So monitoring can be done on a regular basis, no? Pwedeng quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. Evaluation, on the other hand, is a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information about activities and results of a project in order to determine the project's relevance and or to make decisions to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of a project. So, nandun siya, pwedeng ang evaluation can be done at the end of the term. So, after the, say, for example, end of the 3-year term. So, you'll be evaluating para maging input siya ulit doon sa next cycle or doon sa next term. Okay, so you're looking at the levels of M&E. So this is an example. So it starts with gumagamit siya ng output, outcome, impact. So say for example, ito yung mga questions na ginagamit during the evaluation. Are the water supply facilities functioning as intended? So you look at the output. If yes, you ask another question. Are the water supply facilities utilized as intended? Okay, so dito sa output, you look at the facility, if functioning as intended. Dito sa outcome, you look at the water supply facility, if it is utilized as intended. Then for the impact, the question is, are the optimum health, social, and economic impacts being attained? Nakukuha pa. Okay? So if yes, then ano yung mga benefits? No? If the answer is no for the output, then the question is, how can the functioning be improved? If the response to the outcome question is negative, then the next question is, how can the utilization be improved? Okay. If the answer to the impact question is negative or no, the next question is, what complementary inputs are needed for impact to increase? And then, ito yung mga implications of finding on future interventions. No? Ma-identify yung mga implications of finding on future interventions regarding either project selection criteria, choice of technology, choice of promotion and education techniques, and others. So again, yung mga questions are critical during the evaluation. Sa monitoring, you also ask questions. Okay, so ito yung pinapakita dito sa table na to, yung M&E. No? Nakikita natin yung monitoring and evaluation, and then the implementation. No? So nakikita rin natin yung hierarchy from the provincial physical framework plan papunta sa municipal comprehensive land use plan, and then the municipal comprehensive development plan. No? So from the provincial physical framework plan, no, dapat anong sabi natin dito, dapat naka-align yung municipal comprehensive land use plan, no? And then sinabi din natin earlier na yung comprehensive development plan, while it is sectoral, no, pwede siyang kumuha ng information from the comprehensive land use plan. So ang implementing tool ng comprehensive land use plan is the zoning ordinance. And then ang implementing tool naman ng comprehensive development plan is the local development investment program, no, na ginagawa during the investment program. And then another input papunta sa local development investment program is yung mga barangay development projects na nag-detail doon sa barangay development plan. Now, yung mga barangay development plan can also be an input doon sa comprehensive development plan. And then from the LDIP, ipiprepare yung investment program, and then from the investment program, ipiprepare yung annual budget. Now, notice yung revision, realignment, and implementation. Okay? Ito yung pwedeng mangyari during the stage of implementation habang nagmo-monitor and nag-evaluate. No? So when you during sa comprehensive land use plan, notice that the comprehensive land use plan is valid for 9 years. So 1 to 9 year cycle, no? Or 6 to 9 years. The 6 for the comprehensive development plan and 9 years for the comprehensive development plan. For the LDIP, ang cycle niya is 3 years, and then yung annual investment program is 1 year kasama yung annual budget. No? Now, notice yung arrow nito from the impacts and information base. No? So kung ano yung nagagather na information pwedeng maging input papunta sa municipal comprehensive development plan para gawin yung midterm revision. In the same manner na yung development impact ng programs, outputs, and outcomes can also be an input doon sa information base habang yung outputs and outcomes ng PP programs and projects, no, madidetermine yung impact nun. And then this is also an input para magkaroon ng revision during the midterm of the comprehensive development plan. So about mga mid-year nun. So that's, sorry, the midterm nung comprehensive development plan. So it's nandun sa around third year of the plan. No? And then pwede rin silipin yung mga private sector investment. No? And then you look at how the land uses change. So during monitoring. And then again, that information base can also be an input para magkaroon ng midterm revision ng comprehensive development plan or the revision of the comprehensive land use plan. Okay? So dito sa right, from the annual investment program, may implement mo to via the annual budget. No? So you have your development projects. Now you conduct monitoring and implementation ng mga development projects sa local government unit. And then again, depende kung ano yung output and outcome, no, mag-feed papunta ulit sa information base, no, doon sa monitoring ng mga indicators, which again will contribute, no, will be the basis kung magkakaroon ng midterm revision ng CDP or magkakaroon ng revision yung comprehensive land use plan. Again, you can also look at pwedeng silipin yung outputs and outcomes ng provincial and national projects. No? Pwedeng silipin kung ano yung naging outputs and outcomes nun para mag-input papunta sa impacts and information base ng local government. Okay? So, yung mga programs and outputs, hindi lang solely may mapupunta sa impacts on information base. It can also be an input para makita kung need ng realignment yung local development investment. Kung kailangan bang i-realign. Depende dun sa output and outcome ng local government units development projects and provincial or national projects. Okay, so this is the monitoring and evaluation points in a 3-year term of office. Okay, so year one, no, ng year one ng term of office. Actually, yung term of office, hindi talaga nagpo-fall ng year one in a 3-year term of office. Nagpo-fall siya ng Q3. Okay? Nagpo-fall siya ng Q3 because ang assumption to office is June 30. Okay? Pero assuming na ito year 1, year 2, and year 3 lang. Nilatag lang siya by year 1. So, doon sa kaya nakalagay sa year 1, implementation of last year budget and EIP of previous administration. So, dito siya mangyayari sa Q3. Okay. Kasi yung next election would occur May, ulit, Q2, after the year 3 term. No? So, implementation of last year budget and EIP of previous administration, kasi na-approve na yung budget ng previous year. So, ang i-implement yun mula Q1 hanggang Q4. Pag upo ng June 30, susundan niya lang yung last year's budget and AIP of the previous administration. So, nakalagay dito, election occurs in Q2. So, magkakaroon ng M&E, yung impact of previous administrations, LDIP and ELA. Ideally, nagkakaroon ng report na no, yung local chief executive doon sa kanilang 3-year term. No? And then, ito na yung end of term report, and then magkakaroon ng inaugural of new term, inauguration of new term. And then, prepare na ng ELA, okay, for LDIP for the subsequent years kung nag-end na yung, kung mag-end na kasi yung LDIP kung 6 years, no, mag-end siya ng Q4. And then preparation of year 2 budget and the first AIP of the new leader. So, etong year 2 budget, ang kinapture sa Q3 and Q4 is Q1. Kaya year 2 budget, doon pa lang mag-a-approve yung local chief executive. So, ang mangyayari during the year 2, yung buong year 2, that's Q1, 2, 3, 4, no? Implementation of year 2 budget and the first AIP. And then, mag-prepare ulit ng year 3 budget and the second AIP. So, since nag-end yung year, pwedeng mag-conduct ng monitoring and evaluation, outputs and financial performance, including the end of year report. No? So pareho din yung mangyayari sa year 3, no? Implementation of year 3 budget and second AIP. No? So kung na-craft yung LDIP, yung AIP is a slice of the LDIP. So dito sa year 2, year 3, and year 4. No? So at the end of the year, again, pwedeng mag-conduct ng MNP or mag-prepare ng end of year report. Okay? And then on year 4, implementation of 4-year budget and the third AIP of the local chief executive, no? I-wrap up yung activities na na-design ng local chief executive because bago mag-elections, nag-clearance na yung mga tumakbo na hindi nanalo during the elections. No? So babalik ulit tayo dito sa items sa year 1. No? Pwede magkaroon ng impact of previous administrations, LDIP and ELA. No? Pwedeng silipin ulit kung ano yung na-deliver from the executive and legislative agenda. And then magkakaroon ng end of term report yung outgoing local chief executive, and then magkakaroon ng inaugural new term yung assuming that there is a newly elected local chief executive. No? So again, the LDIP, since it's a 6-year document, then valid pa siya, pero magkakaroon ulit ng ELA. No? Again, every local chief executive, pag umuupo, yung year 1 budget nila is just a implementation of the year 3 budget of the previous local chief executive. So ang pinipirmahan na ng new local chief executive is a year 2 budget and the first AIP na i-implement the following year. Okay, the last chapter of the RPS is getting the local planning system to work. Okay, this chapter serves as the roadmap to help the user negotiate the rest of the preceding chapters. Okay, so ano yung status of existing groups and zoning ordinances? So, if you have a group, no, if it's existent, the question is, 2 scenarios. Is it compliant in terms of form and content? No? If the group is existent and it is not compliant in terms of form and content, then there's a need to revise to conform with form and content. Ang critical chapter is chapters 4 and 5. Okay, doon sa group formulation. And then if the group is existent and if it is compliant in terms of form and content, our next question is, meron bang zoning ordinance o wala? No? If walang zoning ordinance, then prepare or draft or enact the zoning ordinance. Kung may zoning ordinance, 2 scenarios. It's either the zoning ordinance is compliant in terms of form and content or it is non-compliant. If it is non-compliant, then you revise the zoning ordinance. Okay? Yung local sanggunian needs to revise the zoning ordinance. If the zoning ordinance is compliant in terms of form and content, then mag-implement ng monitoring and evaluation. Okay? If the group is not existent, then ang gagawin lang ng local government unit is to prepare the CLUP following the 12 steps, starting from organizing the team. Doon to start yung group preparation. And of course, kapag matapos na yung group, i-enact yung zoning ordinance. No? So kapag meron ka ng group, ang sagot mo na is existent. And then the next question is it compliant with form and content? So babalik ka dito sa scenario nito. If the group it has been prepared. Okay. So again, it's not just the group, but also the zoning ordinance. Okay, kapag naman CDP, okay, we have a CDP. Okay, so let's start with walang CDP, non-existent. Okay, so kung non-existent yung CDP, okay, ang nakalagay dito is to prepare the CLBP and LBIP. Okay, ang assumption is wala kang CDP, so malamang wala ka rin CLBP. And then you prepare the LDIP because LDIP nanggagaling siya kay CDP. Okay? So kung wala kang CDP pero may AIP, okay, you implement monitoring and evaluation. Okay? Or the next thing that you do is to prepare group and LDIP and iterate the AIP. Okay? Kung meron namang ELA or executive agenda, okay? You conduct you implement monitoring and evaluation, and then you iterate it into CDP LDIP. Kung walang ELA, you prepare ELA, okay, within the CDP/LDIP process. If the CDP is existent, okay, but without ELA, you do the same. You know, prepare ELA within the CDP and LDIP process. If with ELA, you implement monitoring and evaluation and iterate into CDP and LDIP. If CDP is existent and merong AIP, you implement monitoring and evaluation, you make LDIP, then you iterate AIP. Pag walang LDIP, the same din ang gagawin. Pag may LDIP or AIP, you implement monitoring and evaluation. And then kung merong NGA required plans, you iterate into CDP process. No? Kailangan kasi doon sa CDP na capture na yung mga NGA required plans para kapag nag-prepare ng sectoral plans, nakalink yung sectoral plan papunta sa comprehensive development plan. No? Say for example, yung local government units are required to prepare their gender development plans. No? So this is being required by law. No? Yung at least 5% of their total annual budget. So dapat na-capture din siya doon sa comprehensive development plan para kapag nag-prepare na ng annual plan, because yung GAD actually merong GAD agenda which is good for 3 years, and then isa-slice mo siya ulit into annual plans. No? So you have your annual GAD plans. So dapat na ipasok siya doon sa comprehensive development plan. No? Including yung LDRRM, no? Dapat kasama siya doon sa CDP process, no? Kasama yung making the CDP risk informed, no? Para yung piniprepare na annual LDRRM plan, no? Is consistent doon sa CDP. Okay, so ano yung mga plans na dapat incorporated in the CLUP? Okay, we have the Agriculture and Fisheries Management Plan, including the Strategic Agriculture and Fisheries Development Zone, the Forest Management Plan or Forest Land Use Plan, Sustainable Integrated Area Development Plan or the Local Agenda 21, the Integrated Watershed Management Plan, the Ancestral Domain Sustainable Development and Protection Plan, Protected Area Management Plan, and the Coastal Resource Management Plan, or the CRMP. Okay, ito naman yung kasama dapat or na-incorporate sa Comprehensive Development Plan. Plans that require intersectoral functional committees, we have the Local Poverty Reduction Action Plan, Disaster Management Plan, Sustainable Development Plan, Gender and Development Plan, Food Security Plan, and the Integrated Area Community Peace and Order and Public Safety Plan. It is IACP, pero ang nire-require niya ngayon is the simply called as the PAPS Plan or the Peace and Order and Public Safety Plan. Okay? Kaya pag nagpe-prepare ng LDIP, ideally dapat natapos na yung mga plans na to, no? However, kasi na nag-change ng administration during elections, inaantay na makapag-assume ng posisyon, no? Para bumangga doon sa priorities nila doon sa executive agenda and then sa legislative agenda or the ELA. No? So, these are the plans na dapat kasama doon sa CDP. And then the plans that fall within the concern of individual sectors, we have action plan for the Council of the Protection of Children, no, and their social protection. The Animal Culture and Arts Plan, no, this is also under social sector. The Agriculture and Fisheries Management Plan, the Coconut Development Program, Local Entrepreneurship Development Program, Local Tourism Plan, and then Small and Medium Enterprise Development Plan. Okay? So, ito yung nag-fall within the concern of the individual sectors. So again, etong mga plans na to are intersectoral, etong mga nasa taas, because hindi siya exclusive lang doon sa sector na yon, no? Like etong peace and order and public safety, so ang concerns ng peace and order and public safety kasama ang crime and disorder, illegal drugs, kasama ang sa planning, sinasama yung disaster. However, meron na namang separate plan for disaster, no? Yung disaster DRRM plan. So, public safety, dun pasok ang fire, Bureau of Jail and Management. So, pasok sila dun sa public safety plan. And then, emergency. So, emergency situations, kasama sa public order and public safety plan. No? So, kasama ang offices involved are the ESTMO, no, yung sa traffic. So kaya dapat intersectoral, no, involves intersectoral committees, no. Kasama din sa gender and development plan, kasi gender and development plan ma-accommodate niya lahat, no. Sa disaster management plan, meron ding sectors apart from the DRRM office, involved din ang social welfare and development office, involved din ang health office, no, sa disaster management plan, involved din ang police officers, no, for peace and order and public safety, even yung Bureau of Fire, no, involved din sila sa disaster risk reduction and management plan. Kaya require intersectoral functional committees etong mga plans, no. Okay, so yun yung kinapture ko from the rationalized planning system. Ito na yung version ng presentation. So time check time is 4:49. So that is where my presentation ends. Thank you for staying and for listening.